Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिवचक आचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतशिष्य श्रीमद ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिवचक आचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतशिष्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर श्री प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की नाम चर्चिला हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से गौर श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोविंद श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की वृंदावन धाम की मथुरा धाम की गंगा माई की यमुना माई की तुलसी देवी की भक्ति देवी की समवेत भक्तवृंद की all glories to the Samadhi, all glories to the Samadhi, Hare Krishna, all glories to the Samadhi, Hare Krishna, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Shri Prabhupada, Namo Vishnupada, Krishna Prasthaya, Buddha Dev, Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Tinone. All right. So, can I get the Bhagavatam? Thank you. All right. Yeah, please. Some warm, yeah. So, reading from text 34, sorry, chapter 5, text 34. So we're in Canto 2. So 34. Okay. All right. Got it? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, reading from Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 34. Let me get it up here so we don't have a difference. Okay, so Varsha Puga Sahasrante Tad Andham Udake Shayam Kala Karma Svabhava Sto Jiva Jivo Ajivam Ajivyat Varshapuga Sahasrante Tadandam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivyat Jivo Jivam Ajivayat Varshapuga Sahasrante Tadandam Udake Sayam कालकर्म स्वभावस्तो जीवो जीवमजीवयत् वर्षपूगसहस्रान्ते तदण्डं मुदकेशयम् कालकर्म स्वभावस्तो जीवो जीवमजीवयत्. Please repeat. जीवयत्. जीवयत्. तदण्डमुदकेशयम् कालकर्मस्वभावस्तो जीवो जीवमजीवयत्. Mataji? वर्षभोगसहस्रान्ते तदण्डमुदकेशया कालकर्मस्वभावस्तो जीवो जीवमजीवयत्. Anyone else? Varshapuga, many years. Sahasrante, of thousands of years. Tat, that. Andam, the universal globe. Udaki, in the causal water. Shayam, being drowned. Kala, eternal time. Karma, action. Swabhavastaha, according to the modes of material nature. Jivaha, the Lord of the living beings. Ajivam, non-animated. Ajivayat, caused to be animated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Purport, translation. Thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean. And the Lord of living beings, entering into each of them, caused them to become fully animated. Purport. The Lord is described here as the Jiva because He is the leader of all other Jivas, living entities. In the Vedas, He is described as the Nitya, the leader of all other Nityas. The Lord's relation with the living entity is like that of the father with the sons. The sons and the father are qualitatively equal, but the father is never the son, nor is the son ever the father who begets. So, as described above, the Lord is Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, or Hiranyagarbha Vishnu, super soul, enters into each and every universe and causes it to become animated by begetting the living entities within the womb of the material nature. as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, after 14.3, after each annihilation of the material creation, all the living entities are merged within the body of the Lord, and after creation, they are again impregnated within the material energy. In material existence, therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of all living entities, and the Lord is the Father. When, however, the animation takes place, the living entities revive their own natural activities under the spell of time and energy, and thus varieties of living beings are manifested. The Lord, therefore, is ultimately the causes of all the animation in the material world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunitamiena Tasmai Shri Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Sthapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guruji Taptakalam Shri Gurun Vaishnapamasya Shri Rupam Sagarjanam Sakana Raghunathan Vitam Tansajiva Sadhutam Sabhutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Radhita Shri Vajakan Vitam Shahi Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinavanda Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneswari Prishavanusate Devi Pranamam Hari Panchakalpadarvishya Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo 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 Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhatale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Samitane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Samitane Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarina Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gauravaktinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So discussing the cause of all causes. Again, creation and secondary creation. I think primarily creation is described here. So here we're starting to discuss that thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the waters, the causal ocean, and the Lord of all beings enter into each of them, cause them to become fully animated. So Prabhupada, he begins this purport by making this very clear, that because the Lord here is addressed as Jiva, so making it very clear again and again throughout the Bhagavatam that separating the Jiva from the Lord, who is the Purusha, the Vishnu Tattva, he's separating that. He's making sure that at every moment that this concept is very much annihilated, this impersonalism. So he makes that very clear, and this is, of course, also cleared up in the Bhagavad Gita that Mamevamsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manas Sashtirandriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati, that the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragment parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So referencing to that verse, this is very clear that Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke, that he is the supreme of all jivas. So Prabhupada makes that clear here, that Lord is described here as the jiva because he's the leader of all other jivas. And so Prabhupada goes on to describe how he's like the father. So he's also described as Nitya, the leader of all the Nityas. Because all the living entities are Satchit Ananda, they are eternal by nature. Why? Because Mamai Vamsa Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That they're eternal fragments, parts. They're all actually eternal, just like the Lord. And Prabhupada describes how they're one in quality, but different in quantity. One is a creator, the other is the created. He's making it very clear there is a distinction. There is the seer and the seen. And then the Mayavadis don't see, they don't see that. They see that as one. Whereas here we're clearly making the distinction between the creator and the created. One is under control, the other is the controller. So it is very important to understand this point. Even in this realm of creation, is very easily understood that the Purusha is there, that the Lord who is impregnating the universe, who is bringing about this creation, we are not that. Tatvamasi, we are that. Then Mayavadis translate that like that. Tatvamasi, I am him. We are all one, we are all the same. But it's very clear, even amongst the, even discussing in the Bhagavatam of the creation, or even amongst the Vedic literatures, the creation, what comes about, and how Vishnu, in this case Garbhodaksha Vishnu, that we're discussing, how he impregnates the universe, and to take that same principles and to say that we did all that we're actually non-different from that, it's foolishness. So Prabhupada very much hits on that principle. The Lord's relation with the living entities is like that of the Father with the sons. The sons and the Father are qualitatively equal, but the Father is never the Son. Nor is the Son ever the Father who begets. So foolish living entities, mudhas, they qualitate the Lord with themselves, with the jiva, like just like the Lord is being referred to as jiva, they will take that to mean actually we're all the Lord, we're all actually Krishna, we're all the same. But a very clear distinction is made when one actually studies the Vedic literature without the preconception of Mayavad. It's very clear, it's really clear to understand. This whole universe is being created. And it's obvious that we can't do any of that. Even to create anything in this world, we're so dependent on so many other factors. We're not independent at all. We're dependent on our mind to be cooperative. We're dependent on our body to cooperate. We're dependent on others to cooperate. We're dependent on material nature to cooperate. But the Lord doesn't depend on all those things. He's completely independent. What's this word used in the first? It's not swarat. Abhigya, sorry. Abhigya swarat. So his swarat is independence. So his swarat is completely independent. He does not depend on material nature to be in a particular state in order to create like this. He's not dependent on that. He's not dependent. The Lord doesn't have a material body, mind, and senses. He's completely transcendental. So, whereas the living entity, even if he wants to create, he's dependent on so many things. He's dependent. We're completely dependent. We're dependent on money. We're dependent on, even if you wanted to, just like the Lord is impregnating here, the material nature and creating the living entities, is impregnating the living entities into material nature. In this case, if that may be the first way I said it, may be technically wrong. So if he's doing that, and we do the same thing, just like a man impregnates a woman, still there's so many dependents. It is not completely independent. Whereas the Lord, he's completely independent in his creation. Everything that he does, he does according to his will. So that is being described very clearly by Srila Prabhupada here, in this making sure at every moment that this Mayavad and this impersonalism is completely wiped out. So, as described above, the Lord is Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Hiranyagarbha Super Soul, enters into each and every universe and causes it to become animate by begetting the living entities within the womb of material nature, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14.3. So, that verse is Mama Yonir Mahabrahma Tasmin Garbham Didhami Aham Sambhava Sarva Bhutanam Tad Bhavati Bharata. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of the birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making impossible the birth of all living beings, O son of Bharata. After each annihilation of material creation, all the living entities are merged within the body of the Lord, and after creation they are again impregnated within the material energy, the material existence. Therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of living entities, and the Lord is the Father. So, very important points here. Throughout, Prabhupada makes throughout his books and throughout some of these verses, like 14.3, that everything is going on due to the kshetra and the kshetragya. There's the field of activity, or the body, and then there's the knower of that field. So, this combination of mature nature and this Prakriti and Purusha, the living entity, is also referred to as Purusha. Purusha Prakito Stohi. Prakriti Purusha, sorry. Prakriti Stohi. Punkte Pratik Tangunan. Guna Sangasya Sadasad Yoni Janmasu. So that's 13, what verse? 13.20. 1329 or something like that. So the living entities, they're trying to exploit material nature. Prakriti Purusha. I'm gonna mess up the word. Purusha Prakriti Stohi. So they meet with good evil according to their interaction with their association with this material nature. So 1322. Just gonna bring that up. Sorry. Okay, so sorry, the internet's like really slow. 1322. Wow, I've never seen. So, anyway, so continuing on. So the living entities, the combination of material nature and living entities is due to the will of Krishna. That this Mahatattva, the total cause of cosmic manifestation, in which there is material nature, the three modes of material nature, and this is often referred to as Brahman, and Prabhupada references that to the Mukunda Upanishad, Tasmad etad Brahma Nama Rupam Annam cha Jayate. Sorry. So he references Mukunda Upanishad in this regard. Oh, sorry. Mundaka, sorry. Mundaka Upanishad. So, 14. Yeah, Mundaka, sorry, my fault. So, there are all these, there's this total cause of cosmic manifestation, three modes of material nature. Material nature contains the three modes. This is often referred to as Brahman. And the Lord impregnates that total substance, and thus, from that impregnation, the innumerable universes come about. So he is particularly impregnating with the seeds of the living entities. And so there's this also, the 24 elements are often referred to, Prabhupada says in this purport, as Mahat Brahma, the great Brahman. And so the 7th chapter specifically speaks on these two natures. Krishna describes these two natures in the 7th chapter, where he describes his inferior nature and the superior nature. So earth, water, air, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, the false ego. Altogether, these constitute my separated material energies. Beside these, Almighty Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of material inferior nature. So the Prabhupada specifically references is saying that the superior nature is mixed with this inferior nature by the will of the Lord. And the living entities are born from this. And so often what Prabhupada goes on to hear in this purport is that, sorry, I'm going to bring it up, that the material existence, therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of all of the living entities, and the Lord is the Father. When, however, the annihilation takes place, the living entities revive their own natural activities under the spell of time and energy, and thus the varieties of living beings are manifested. The Lord, therefore, is the ultimate cause of all animation in this material world. So often, because of this, they just see material nature. They believe, often like we were referencing before, how they take material nature to be feminine in a couple of verses back. Because material nature, its Prakriti is actually feminine energy. They take that to be the cause of all causes. That this because of some big bang or some interactions of matter, everything is coming about. That is the verdict of the scientists. That is the verdict of the materialists, of the atheists. Because that idea with that idea, there is no Purusha. There's Prakriti, but there's no Purusha. They don't understand. They don't have a concept of that there is a Purusha bhav. That without Purusha, there is no Prakriti. So without, everything is due to Kshetra and Kshetragya. There is this field, but who is the knower of that field? Who is the creator of that field? That knowledge is not given within the modern science, or within this atheistic scientific understanding. And without that, it's quite bewildering to speak about the creation of the universe. because they say material nature is the cause, but just like Prabhupada gives the example of a scorpion being born out of rice. That people, it doesn't just come about by its own. That there's another scorpion generally that lays the eggs that's not seen. And because the scientists, they're so blind and they cannot see, they take, just like any intelligent person, a baby may think, a child or a young child may think, oh yeah, look, there's living entities coming out of rice. Rice is not living, particularly it's just is being cut and it's done its life and given its result. But that rice itself cannot impregnate, is not animate, it's an inanimate object. But a foolish child may think to be, oh look, a scorpion is being born out of this. Similarly, if you take that same principle, the material scientists are no different. They're no different. As material nature is an inanimate object, just like anything here, just surrounding me, these are material objects. They're completely inanimate. Unless something animate comes and causes some movement, there is no question of this cup moving on its own. There's no chance, actually. They say chance, but there's no chance of this cup moving on its own unless there is an actor upon it. Unless there is a person who is actually causing that animation to happen. So this is described that the super soul, the Lord, He is the ultimate cause of animations in the world. What's that second? It's the first verse actually. How does that start in Isha Upanishad? No, so that's the invocation. Ishavasamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyagdvena bhunjita magudha kasya swidhanam. So there's the Lord is the I'm going to bring it up so I don't. Okay. Wow, this internet is like really bad. I can't even search. Can you bring up this first verse of Isha Upanishad? I just want to read the translation as it is. Isavasim, the Lord of. Okay. Oh, it's gone. You got it? Isha 1. So if you go, everything animate and inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. So that specific point I wanted to point out. If you go up, the two words used, you got to go a little bit down. Jagat, that is animate. He's Jagatyam, Jagat, Tyaktena. So he's the controller of all of those things. So this inanimate and animate objects, whatever it is ultimately caused by the Lord. But the scientists cannot accept that. Because just like a foolish child, he doesn't have enough intelligence to see beyond the rice or see beyond the fact that a scorpion may be actually born from another scorpion. They choose to disregard it, because if you choose to regard it, then so many questions come about. Just like I was hearing this he's a very well-known astrologer, scientist, a lot of talking about galaxies and universes. And he was asked why you don't believe in God. And he doesn't believe in God because his conception of God is that of limited to that of Christianity. How can God be all good, but there's so much bad in the world? Therefore, I cannot accept God. So they choose not to ask the difficult questions of life. Just because of this, because there is no other answer, because Christianity doesn't have the answer, there must be no other answer. So they blindly accept this understanding of that everything is caused by inanimate object. Because there's a singularity, but material nature, just like if we examine it, it cannot move about on its own. How does that singularity get influenced to cause so many other, singularity? What's the other opposite of singularity? Plurality. So many different causes from one singularity. How does it even function? How does that even come about? And then there's a whole question of how does it move without time? If was there time before? then if there was no time before, it becomes really confusing for them to actually understand all these things. Therefore, they just call it a Big Bang. And happened by chance. But then, like, you can never by chance anything material move about. Nothing by chance can happen. So by chance, generally, if you hear someone say by chance, generally they also means they don't know. You don't know, so therefore you just say, oh, by chance. It happened by chance, I don't know. But they don't want to say I don't know, because then you lose faith in them. Just like I was asking this in a Sunday Feast class, I was asking this question. Who knows what happens after death? Who taught you? Did you ever ask this question in school? He said, yes. What did they tell you? He said, you become peaceful. I said, okay. And then I questioned him a bit about some of those things. And then ultimately it was like, who are they to comment on it? Who are they to comment on such a principle that they have no idea about? They're just thinking, speculating. Similarly to the scientists, they're just speculating. It's just all speculation. Their mathematical equations and their systematic way of thinking is all based upon other assumptions that assume other different things, other assumptions it's all based on assumptions and chances. There's no real substance to it. And when you give this question of Purusha and Prakriti, how can Prakriti move without Purusha? Then for them that becomes bewildering. Then they don't want to discuss those questions. Why? Because ultimately you come to the platform of understanding that there's God, there's a controller, there's intelligence is required, the Kshetra and Kshetragyan, there is intelligence, knowledge, and one who is actually a person who owns that knowledge. So they don't want to discuss all these things. They don't want to, and because of that, they'll never come to a proper conclusion as to the creation of this material world. It's not possible for them without acknowledging this fact. And I was watching a video, and he was particularly stating that even this science was actually established on the basis of theists. All the scientists who took up and were exploring this scientific world were actually theists. All the what do you call them, founders of science were theists. So it's actually, if you take the way that Vedic culture takes things, they're upper sampradaya. The scientist line, they've actually deviated from what was the original purpose of science. So they're actually going away from what was their, they say their Acharyas desired to do, because they believed in God. They saw that this material universe was such a great creation coming from God that they wanted to understand it. For us, we don't have to do that because Bhagavatam gives the perfect understanding. If you look through Bhagavatam, you get everything, how the 24 elements come about, how material nature comes about, how the living entities come about. We have a perfect understanding. But they did not have that. So naturally, being in the form of human life, which is meant for inquiry, they were inquiring about this great manifestation of the Lord. Actually, that was their purpose. It was not the purpose to establish a philosophy against the Lord. So what modern science is actually completely deviant of what the purpose of science was. So the purpose of science was to understand these things right here that the Srimad Bhagavatam is speaking about. But they want to go away from that, and we can see what the result is as they progress in that manner. Is the society is degraded because they can't. Their struggle continues. There's this verse is this Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that they struggle very hard with the six senses, which includes this mind. Because ultimately they want to dominate material nature. That's why they want to understand it. So that Mayavad tendency is so prominent within the Western world. That's why Srila Prabhupada came. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvitsesha Shunyavadi Pashyate Disatarine. you can see how prominent it is in just even this understanding of material nature. Why do they want to understand? Why do they want to study? So they can conquer. They want to be Purusha. They want to be God. They want to create. Therefore they struggle. They struggle. They actually, instead of trying to dominate, they don't understand they are dominated by the modes of material nature. That's what this Prabhupada states that here. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul. And by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is free from this material condition. And he is under the engagements of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his condition, he is dominated. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by material modes of nature. And he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his material existence in this world. The living entity is not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the greater controllers of this material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are eternal, not temporary manifestations. So the conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is the driving him into material existence. When the mind is so they completely, he's bound up by the false ego. The scientists are bound by the false ego, thinking themselves to be the creators, just like they create something small in a lab, and they think themselves to be a creator, and somehow around it they miss the principle of Purusha and Prakriti. The creator and the created, even though they themselves, their activities prove the existence of God. Their activities, what they're doing, prove the existence of God, but somehow or other, by bewildered by their false ego, bewildered by material nature, their illusion, and they want to continue trying to be Purusha, trying to be controller. So then they'll struggle, not acknowledging that nature that we have of being a controller, Purusha Bhav, is coming from the Lord ultimately. Not acknowledging that point brings one to a great level of entanglement. He becomes bound up by material nature. So Bhagavatam, you can see that these scientists therefore are struggling all the time. If you look at PhDs and all these scientists that work in these labs, they're not in ecstatic bliss, chanting and dancing. They're suffering like anything. PhDs, my God, you spend 12, 13 hours a day getting paid peanuts.
You get peanuts, you get paid to study.
PhD, because you're doing research for them. But it's suffering. But the devotees of the Lord who study the same thing, we see Vidura and Sukadeva Goswami, Sudha Goswami, they're all discussing the same things, but they're relishing it. Just like, where the Bhagavatam, the whole Bhagavatam is relishable for people like myself who are not advanced in Krishna consciousness. When I read such things, it's always difficult to get through. But the devotees of the Lord, pure devotees of the Lord, they're able to relish such things, the creation and the manifestations. Whereas because the scientists, they're trying to figure it out, they're always suffering. And they never figure it out. They're always bewildered at every step. They cannot conquer material nature. These three modes of material nature, they'll never be able to conquer. So their life is full of struggle because of that Purusha Bhav, try to be the creator, just like Vishnu is creating, it's not even a thought for him. It's just coming about in his yoga nidra, in his state of transcendental sleep. But the scientists, they have to work all their life to create one drone that flies in the air, or one phone that can take a picture with a camera, or a plane that can fly in the air. All these things, they're trying so hard to conquer material nature. Therefore, there's always a struggle. Always the struggle for existence. Because they want to be equal to the Lord. And Prabhupada is making that very clear here, that the living entity is not equal to the Lord. The Son is never the Father. So So the Father is never the Son, nor is the Son ever the Father who begets. So if they simply understand the cause of creation, the process of creation and manifestation and annihilation according to Srimad Bhagavatam, their struggles will actually be over. Their struggle will end. That's it. It's very simple. Why would you not accept something superior that causes your life to be simple and blissful? It is a fool who wants his life to be complicated. And that complication of life brings about great level of misery. He's a fool. You can live simply off the land, but you want to go work like a dog. And the happiness that you experience is not actually that different. It is just mental. On the mental platform. The happiness you experience is actually the struggle. Because of the struggle, you think you're happier. People in university, you go and you ask him, are you happy? Well, what's happiness? Well, it's just, I like to struggle. It is a fool. It's just people who are completely fools in this world. Everywhere, it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. Dvibhuja Prabhu was telling us, it doesn't make any sense that you would want to be a part of this material world when something like Krishna consciousness is presented. Just like I was presenting this to one of the guys that were here, who's got nothing going on in his life. He's not very intelligent, and he's not a great singer or an artist or any of these things. Actually, his life is going to be hell. But I have to do this. People look up to me. Who looks up to you? People forget you in 30 seconds. People forget you like that. You go on the street, say something to someone, they're not going to remember you again. Guru Maharaj was making this point in regarding our book distribution. Yeah, they're not going to remember you. And forget, these people are so absorbed in so many other things. Who's going to remember you? It's the most famous people in this world. The Beatles are not remembered. You think you're going to be remembered. It's just so amazing how the living entities, that Purusha Bhav, so conditioned by it. And when they have the opportunity to take up Krishna consciousness, they don't understand that if they don't take that opportunity now, when they have the chance, it's not going to be given to them again for a long time. Just like I'm sure we've had our own experiences in life. I had my own experience then. If I didn't do what I did then, I was done. Millions and billions of lives. Here we go again. Really, if we didn't do what we did at that moment in our lives, gave it another year, I wouldn't be here. I would not be here. Because material nature is just so strong. It's just like, as soon as you give her some room, that's it. Finish. You think, oh, I'll be okay. I'll get this done, get this done, get this done. No. Don't do that. Surrender now. If you have the opportunity, you're not tied up, you are freed up, just do it now. What's the issue? If you don't do it now, it just means you're insincere, actually. Because you're not going to do it later. Because of that Purusha Bhav, that desire to dominate, even though you've come to a level of happiness. Just like they were describing, all these three men that were here. I've never felt love like anywhere else like here. Everywhere else I've been, you can watch the interviews. We're going to put them up on YouTube soon. With the audio. So, they're describing, I'm feeling so much love here. Feeling so much love. But I can't let go of my suffering. That's their conclusion. But I can't let go. So, but aren't you suffering, earning such a little money in this world? Earning such little money, having to struggle. But no, I have to do it. Why do you have to do it? What is there? There's no love. You can't eat properly. You can't sleep properly. You don't have proper friends. You can't. What are you enjoying? I'm from a different part of the world, so like I'm understanding, like recently I understood how America's economy, at least how people work and how they have to, people just to maintain their life, they have to work 2 jobs. And even when they work that, it's still a big struggle. That's a little like new to me because it's a little different in Australia. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I just wasn't exposed to it. But it's just ridiculous that people want to live like this. And that all comes about by this atheistic scientific understanding of, they exhibit that, of I have to do something, I'm the creator of my future, and I have to, actually their karma is such that they can never be rich, they'll actually always be perpetually in that cycle of their birth and death, and whatever they deserve is their happiness, they can't get it. It's just going to be given to them according to what they deserve. Bhagavatam says like that, therefore forget about it. Therefore don't endeavor for that, because it's illusion, because you're going to get it anyways. In different forms, just like I was telling him actually, telling this person, this homeless guy on the bottom of the bridge is enjoying life better than any of the people working in these buildings who have great IT jobs. I saw the homie, he was on a phone, charging his phone. He had 3 beds stacked up. He was chilling. We pulled up, gave him some food. He took it. He's enjoying life. Yeah, really, he's enjoying life. I was driving. I was like, God damn, he made it. He really made it. He ain't got to work. He ain't got to do anything. He really made it. People drop out food for him all the time. Yeah. Yeah. So by karma, everything comes about. By Python sannyasi. Yeah, that's there in the Bhagavatam. He just chills out, and everything, happens according to your karma. So everything is going on, but when we get presented to escape mature nature, immediately we should take it. We should not try to go even back into it. If we're at a certain point at our Krishna consciousness, may not be able to fully surrender in some of our cases in universities and doing different studies and whatever, and you may have to go through that, but we do not at any point go back to any of our old ways or old habits or old attractions. Even though we are attracted, we still tolerate that. We just tolerate it. We just tolerate it. We don't have to engage in it. Why do we have to engage in it? Krishna consciousness has all the engagement you need. You just don't understand. For me, it's just like now more and more that I practice, it's inconceivable. It really is inconceivable. And then you can start to understand from that inconceivable nature how we fell. How everything can be given to you. The love, the happiness, great place to stay, great association, great philosophy. Not one thing can they say there's wrong. Not one thing. You tell us what is wrong. And although their lives, and contrary to that, opposite to that, every single thing in their life is trash. It's horrible. But because of this Purusha Bhav, they cannot accept. Too much bound up by false ego. So they cannot understand all these things, creation and subcreation and annihilation, how these things are going about. They don't want to understand. How can you wake up a sleeping man? How can you wake up a sleeping man? Just like yesterday, Abhimanyu Sutta, I was asking him to do Mangalarti and he was pretending to be asleep. And we were shaking him and he was like, I was like, all right, he did a good job. So, he did a good job. This is like 10 o'clock. Because Master told me, just before I walked in, he said, bro, I'm going to knock out, bro. And then I walked in and he's like, anyways, that was funny. He wasn't snoring. He was like, we were trying to make him laugh, but he didn't laugh. I was like, all right, that's okay then. And you don't have to do it. I don't know why you thought we didn't know that you were doing that. Yeah. So everything is going on by the sanction of the super soul within the heart. These people, but because they're so clouded, even when they come close, they're very far. Simply because they want to enjoy. This enjoying tendency leads to this wanting to be the enjoyer. Even within devotional service, you won't understand it. You won't understand it. That's why they're not able to completely understand it, because of that enjoying mentality, that I want to continue enjoying the world. So then they become bound up, such and such. But the Lord in His creation, He's not bound up. He's completely free. Just like if we try to create in this world, you become bound by your labor, bound by activities. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying, at the end of this purport, when, however, the annihilation takes place, the living entities revive their own material activities under the spell of time and energy, and thus the varieties of living entities are manifest. The Lord, therefore, is ultimately the cause. So the living entities, when they are manifested again, and they continue their activities, they cause entanglement to themselves. Whereas the Lord, He's never entangled. He's always, He's in His transcendental state doing what He wants to do, whatever He likes. And play, whether He's a cowherd boy, playing in the forest, or He's dancing with the gopis, or He's in Dwarka, He's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He's completely free. He's not bound by those activities. But if we try to imitate those activities in which the living entity is trying, you can see the result. Great level of suffering. So if one simply just accepts this verdict of the Bhagavatam, the information of the Bhagavatam, they will save themselves from so much suffering. They'll save themselves from so much trouble in this world. It just requires submissiveness, humility, and everybody can be happy actually in this world by taking up on the Srimad Bhagavatam, the understanding of it. There's nothing lacking. Everything is there. Everything is there. The substance is completely there. So one just has to be submissive to it. Sometimes we can't understand certain things. They're inconceivable. But overall we can understand Bhagavatam has a perfect record of giving knowledge of the self, the creation. And so we just accept certain things. Just like Prabhupada often describes he describes in the introduction that if you say it's from Vedic literature, you accept. That's all. Why? Because you know it's going to lead to the ultimate goal of life. You don't have to worry. You accept. So we should simply just accept. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he comments in the 11th canto that when one comes to the Bhagavata Marg, this devotional service of the Lord, he can start running with a blindfold on. You can start running. You can put a blindfold on and you can start running as fast as you can. Why? Because you're gonna get to the goal. You've taken the right path. You're guided by the spiritual master. So we're taking the guidance of the Bhagavatam. We're hearing. We're hearing every day. We're reading every day. We're serving. We're performing what the Bhagavatam tells us to do. So in this way, we're living a life in the Bhagavatam state of mind. It's very important. Try to see the world through the Bhagavatam. Try to see the world through the Bhagavatam, and you'll never be confused. You'll never be in anxiety. You'll see the Lord everywhere. You'll see Krishna everywhere by taking up a complete understanding of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is done through. And that Prabhupada is teaching us to do that and teaching others, helping us give this to others through his transcendental book distribution and Harinam, this Harinam Sankirtan and Prasadam distribution, helping people to come up, helping people to experience this. And that was the three things that people like the most when they come in. The knowledge aspects of it, this hearing the Bhagavatam, this Kirtan, Prasadam. And naturally when that's there, this love between the devotees, it's based on actually exchange of this knowledge here, the prasadam, and chanting the holy names of the Lord. That's what our relationships are based on. That's why we have a loving relationship. And so that's what they want the most. You can see those people are saying this, but it's the Nam Sankirtan, the book distribution, the discussion of Bhagavatam. These things are creating that. So this is what they're after. This is the substance they're after. So we're giving that to them in this form of these books, the Association of the Pure Devotee. And when they take these books home, their homes become a dham. It becomes a great place of pilgrimage. If somebody has a Bhagavatam in their house, Krishna himself is residing there. The pure devotee is residing there with his words. So by giving them this, their whole life becomes mangala, this auspicious, very auspicious, completely auspicious. So although they're very unfortunate, their fortune is Srila Prabhupada. And those devotees who are serving Srila Prabhupada and going out and actually giving that to them. And so if we give this knowledge to others, we can understand that the ultimate cause of all causes in this material world, who is actually making everything happen, he is the Supreme Personality in Godhead, Krishna. We can make this very clear. We don't have to be shy. Just like these men are coming, they've never heard about Krishna consciousness before. It's the first time they're coming in touch with devotees, but at the end of it, they could understand. Krishna is God. We're meant to serve Him. And on that basis, we have loving relationship. Very simple. Prabhupada's books are very simple. I'm noticing, like, if you're able to understand Prabhupada's books and preach it, people within the first week, they themselves can preach. I've seen it, and I'm amazed by it. Because it's so simple and straightforward, and it cuts down all your misconceptions. And so this is it. This is the end all and be all right here. The Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, the Chaitanya Charitamrita. People just have to read. And I'm just, in this process of doing this Bhakta program and all that, it's just the level of faith it's giving me in Srila Prabhupada's books is really amazing. And hearing Guru Maharaj describe this book distribution, and just Prabhupada, his only desire is that, and we make that one with our heart. That's it. That's the goal of our lives. Therefore, the Bhakti program is all about book distribution, actually. That's my whole push. That's the whole push, and that's the whole push that it should be, and will always be, and will always be successful when we have that push. And I'm realizing that, and I'm like, and it's like, the more I'm realizing that, the more I'm able to, like, Krishna is giving intelligence how to expand that program. So from book distribution comes everything. So you just focus on this, Prabhupada said. Just focus on this and everything will come. The bhaktas will come. The men will come. And Guru Maharaj says, they may not come indirectly, but if Krishna is pleased with our activities and our mood and our surrender, Krishna will just send men out of nowhere. And we've seen that. It doesn't work. So according to the level of surrender we have, Krishna will reward us accordingly. So take that instruction of the pure devotee to the heart and see how that instruction applies in every single field of Krishna consciousness. Have that vision and we'll become perfect in our services. Have that vision. How is book distribution? How can this service expand book distribution? How can it? How can the farms do it? We've seen it in India. You make the farms, people come, and then you distribute Bhagavatam. So then we're living on the basis of this. Therefore, we're successful. We preach that to them. Cooking, well, they're eating this. What is it on basis of? On the basis of the Bhagavatam, on the basis of Bhagavad Gita. Everything is on this basis. You should read these books if you want to experience cooking and taking food like this, what it means to cook like this, what it means to eat like this. Everything we do is on the basis of the books. It's on basis. The books are the basis of it. And Srila Prabhupada is given that to us. And therefore, if you think like this, if your consciousness is like this, you will be able to understand who Srila Prabhupada is. You understand why book distribution. And you'll never develop an offensive mood towards book distribution. If you do, it's offensive towards Srila Prabhupada. And there's no question of your becoming liberated in this life or in another few lives. It's offensive. We should never, if we develop that mood, we should immediately go out on book distribution. If you have that thought, immediately go out. Otherwise, you're just insincere. If we ever have the feeling that maybe book distribution is not the real thing to do, immediately go out. And you'll see. And it's important. Everyone goes out. We're making this point. Everyone goes out. Everyone has to go out. Everyone has to go through the program of distributing Prabhupada's books and make that the program of their life, whatever time. Some of us have different services, but we're always walking about here and there. You can give some small books to some people, whatever it is, do what you can. So if we're like this, then we can teach people about all this creation, sub-creation, all these things. They can have a perfect understanding. So I'll end my class there. If there's any questions or comments or anything like that, please feel free to ask. Anything? Definitely.
Who, I was thinking firstly, what do they get out of, everything is amazing, everything is here. They still, what do they get? They get this illusion of being independent. That's what they get. That's really what they're ultimately after. That's the definition of Purusha Abhiman. They're like, I am Swarat, I am Swatanta Ishvara. So they get that. And see, the thing is that this whole material science, dabbling with material science, it's basically atheistic Sankhya. That's basically what it is. This whole scientist, it's atheistic Sankhya. And Prabhupada says that the imposter Kapila, he's the father of atheistic Sankhya. The imposter Kapila puts Prakriti as supreme, whereas the original Kapila, Supreme Personality of Godhead, puts Purusha as supreme. That's why in the atheistic, the scientists or they're basically atheistic Sankhya, the followers of atheistic Sankhya in some way, shape, or form. They may divide up the elements. It may even reach up to the point of the soul, and even may reach up to the point of Prakriti, but it'll stop there, because that's their desire.
Point of Prakriti?
Yeah, Prakriti, nature. They'll stop there, but after that, they will not go beyond that.
Because their basis is that there is nothing beyond that.
That's the point.
That's the problem.
And you see that even the scientists you were saying, the founding scientists, they were supposed to be theists, But you can even see that, one of the biggest Christian schools when it was first opened was Fordham University in the Bronx. Fordham University in the Bronx was actually one of the biggest Christian schools. The whole purpose was to preach Christianity and develop children in with that. But now is one of the biggest proponents of atheism. So many schools, actually all these educational institutions, they were meant to be Christian education, but now most of them are completely atheistic. Even what Agnes Scott. These, how much they're promoting of feminism, transgender, all this stuff. It starts off with that. Why? The reason it happens is that the posts where the education goes on, people buy those posts out. That's literally
no Brahmanas.
You get the grants, right? You get grants from someone else. What does that mean? They'll give you so much money. Just let's put one of our members in your staff, and then one becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, and then no one's left.
The same 51%.
51%. Just give us 51% of the voting rights. What does that mean? Give us 100%. They buy you out.
That Brahminical culture is not there. You can't buy Brahmins.
You can't buy Brahmanas. That's the thing.
If you can buy a Brahmin,
he's not a Brahmin.
So there's no Brahmanism, therefore, and because there isn't a complete philosophy within, even in India, this happened, just like deporting them all out. There's no real dedication to the traditional culture of Christianity, even. So, and therefore you see. It's just interesting how we talk about deviations a lot and all this, and how what was originally meant to be, and that deviation, how much havoc that's caused. So it's just important to stick with the principles that the founders have laid down. In any case, we just examine it. Science, they strayed away from that. In Christianity, they strayed away from that. In Christian consciousness, within Prabhupada's movement, that's happened. So it's just what Krishna has established as parampara, you can see how the degradation of the parampara in any aspect of life, it just leads to havoc. So it's just important understanding we should have. Just stick to the principle, no matter what. Even if we become poor and not, we don't have so many riches and a nice place to live, and stick to the principles. Ultimately, you yourself can go back to Godhead. Don't surrender to the material energy or people buying you out or work and paying you this much, therefore I can't share my rounds, I can't attend morning program. Don't surrender to all of that. Live simply. And so this is, as Srila Prabhupada wanted, more of a Brahminical culture, we should try to imbibe that culture. Just learn to be simple. It's like Krishna provides everything, just learn to be simple. Even if, whatever, a lot of the Therefore, as the years progress, Vyastashram will come about. You know, just be simple, be satisfied. Farms will come. Just be satisfied on the farm. It's not worth it. So just stay simple in Krishna consciousness, and everything is simple. This Mataji taught us. You guys, if you guys just stay simple and surrender to your spiritual master for the rest of your life, you'll stay brahmachari. Simple. This Mataji in LA who gave you the cookies.
Oh yeah.
Just stay simple.
Yeah, the kachoris.
Simple. He said, don't expect anything. So just follow the tradition. Don't change anything. Don't be bored out. Otherwise, all these crazy things happen. Anything else? Anyone else? Please.
So, couple of things. This will be discussed more in detail in the next chapter. Towards the end of this chapter, the next chapter is the Purusha Sukta confirmed. You know, may sound actually difficult, but it's not that difficult actually.
You just have to sit down and kind of go through it a little bit.
It's actually quite ecstatic. But anyways, the point is that by performing yajna, which is the point of the Purusha Sukta, that the entire process of creation, everything is basically yajna. And it is by yajna that Vishnu is worshipped. And from that yajna, everything that is required will come about, including material welfare. Krishna also states this in Bhagavad Gita. So, by performing or focusing our lives on what is the purpose of yajna? The purpose of yajna is to satisfy Vishnu. Was that
Yajna vai Vishnu.
Yajna vai Vishnu. That the purpose of performing yajna is to satisfy Vishnu. So if we focus on our lives to please Krishna, then our material needs will be taken care. This is a guarantee. It's stated so many times in different purports. Prabhupada states this. This is the philosophy, this is the entire basis of the Vedas, that yajna is to be performed. So, regarding these brahmanas getting out, so-called brahmanas getting bought out, it'll happen if the brahmanas are speculative. So-called brahmanas, they tend to be speculative. Speculative brahmanas are speculative because they have material desires. The material desires causes them to speculate, and overall a speculative process that is not based on the scriptures and based on how the acharyas and predecessors, acharyas and devotees tradition has been done throughout history. A speculative process based on their abnormal reasoning of time, place and circumstances, and defective philosophy in general causes, lack of knowledge causes speculation. This will result in ultimately, even if the original purpose, for instance, is to preach Christianity, and there is no basis for the philosophy, there is no basis for the knowledge, there is no tradition, there is nothing to hold it up. When there is nothing to hold it up, it will degrade. So, therefore, jnana vairagya yuktaya is required. You require knowledge, you require renunciation. Knowledge is required to understand how everything happens and how everything comes about, what is the purpose of life and how Krishna is pleased, what is the process of worshipping Him, and what is the best for all living entities. Renunciation is required because one needs to surrender onto the process, not think one is the doer, and let Vishnu provide everything. That is the actual surrender, that is the actual renunciation. One who is renounced is completely dependent on Krishna. Krishna gives us a process by which we can be dependent on Him. We are allowed to be dependent on Him, we must be dependent on Him, we should be dependent on, this is our actual position. But that is to understand Krishna as the enjoyer. and that everything that we need will be provided for. So that otherwise everything just gets watered down.
You can experience this in the brahmachari and brahmachari ashram, right? That's what it's here for, is to get that understanding that I'm dependent on the Lord ultimately.
Yeah.
And you won't understand it if you become comfortable here, though.
Yeah.
If you become comfortable in the brahmachari and brahmachari ashram, you will never understand this. And when you do finish up, you'll be so anxiety, you'll jump straight back into material life, because you're the controller still. But if you endeavor and work hard, and that's what Srila Prabhupada says, it's a pushing movement, because by pushing, you start to see how dependent on the Lord you are. So therefore push yourself, push others to do more in Krishna consciousness, understand more of the Bhagavad Gita and whatever, and go out and surrender more on book distribution. You start to see how the Lord provides everything you need. And with that understanding, when you do, people change or whatever situation you may be in, you'll always surrender to Krishna, not to material nature. So this is the training in the brahmacharya ashram. You work out and you start to depend on the Lord more and more. The more you push yourself to not just your body, your mind, and your surrender, the more successful you become in the future in your devotional service. And that's what brahmacharya ashram is, and any pronounced order of life is. You're starting to learn the dependence upon the Lord. And brahmacharya is by knowledge. Brahmacharya is meant to study. So it's very important, this ashram. Every man and woman should go to the ashrams.
Yeah.
Otherwise there's no hope. There's no hope. Have faith. It's a must. It's not an option actually. It's a must. Yes.
It's an interesting point you're making about how it's like within the realm of modern science, the current version is like Upper Sampradaya compared to what it was prior to Christianity. Now it's atheism.
Mm-hmm.
But we see now there is some established acharyas, some scientific orthodoxy. Stephen Hawking's an acharya.
But the basis is of Upper Sampradaya.
Yeah, I know. I'm just curious, like when that orthodoxy switched, how it switched, what time period it switched.
You know.
So Hoksha Maharaj talks in his book that I have to look at it exactly, but that originally, like you were mentioning, the scientists were theistic and things like that, and people used to they had their own philosophies and pretty much just make it really short. But they understood that knowledge was beyond sensory perception and things like that. But then certain scientists and things I think therefore I am, come up with that conclusion pretty much where reality was based on one individual self, the knower of the field pretty much. And so from that you have those different ideas, and that reality is only what I can see, touch, and feel. And then science became based on that. In Europe during those times. That's just European history, and that also bleeds into America.
Well, when science became empirical,
Yeah.
that's the most apparent shift. Although empirical science, science took metaphysics out of it. In the early 20th
everything you can measure, only things you can measure.
Only things that you can measure, see, feel. And empirical science is specifically based on math. If it's not based on math, they don't agree. But previously, there were other fields of science that were not based on math, because everything can. How can you understand the mind with math? You cannot. You cannot perform equations on the mind. It's just not. You cannot. How can you understand love with math? Does love exist? Yes. But if you just reduce everything to math, then it's all chemical reactions and that. So empirical science in the beginning of the 20th century really made this shift. But if you actually understand, the making is more or less from the period of humanism and Renaissance. In the Middle Ages, huh?
In the Middle Ages.
Of Europe, the Renaissance.
Right. But then this Christian Orthodox scientific.
So because previously they would understand everything based on the Bible, right? This is what the Bible says, that's it. And well, the Renaissance period challenged that these things have to be understood only the way the church explains it. Anyways, that's a complex history. So then they say no. So that's why, that's why, Galileo, he was shunned by the church because based on my observation, not true. And they were like, well, that is not what the Bible says. And then his argument was, God isn't asking us to be stupid. God wants us to think. So this sort of revolt, because of lack of knowledge, there's just not enough knowledge. There's just not enough.
Too many questions.
Too many questions, too little answers.
No answers.
So, and it began from there, and it's gone all the way here.
It's like 9:04. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.